We will wash after this. Up to this stage, none of this material has been allowed to reach the environment. We will reclaim it, and we will process it through the recovery boiler. At that stage, we have a pulp which has a lignin content expressed as a kappa number of approximately 15 units. The present pulp mill operates at approximately 32 to 35. So there has been a 2/3 reduction in the amount of lignin. The kappa number is essentially linear with the lignin content. As we enter the chlorination stage, we have installed a 2-stage chemical addition system and are considering a 3-stage should the research indicated it's an improvement. Our objective there is to substitute further for the chlorine, up to 70% of the chlorine, with chlorine dioxide. Research, and I have references if anyone is interested from the latest Pulp and Paper conference in Montreal approximately 3 weeks ago, indicates that the single solitary step of 70% chlorine dioxide substitution has eliminated to below the level of detection dioxin in the pulp. We are preceding this with all the other stages regardless. We then go to an oxidative extractive stage, which is another application of oxygen to the pulp. The process we're proposing will also allow us to use peroxide in this area. Our ultimate goal there is to eliminate gaseous chlorine from the bleach plant. We then will go to 2 dioxide stages and into cleaning and forming. On the recovery side, from the oxygen stage back towards the boilers, oxygen stage, brown stock washing, and digester, we begin our washing, and we are countercurrent washing all the way towards the recovery boiler where the black liquor is incinerated. We are installing technology from all over the world, boilers from Scandinavia, evaporators from West Germany. The digesters will be built in North America but are a hybrid design, American and Swedish. So the equipment is worldwide. It is a global industry, and we are buying our equipment everywhere in the world. The objective, again, is to control spills and to treat the material with the best available technology to strip out compounds which are deleterious, are dangerous to the environment, and to, at the same time, not impact on the odor problem which the existing mill has. We concentrate the liquor, incinerate it. We are using a Gottervirken, or are proposing to use a Gottervirken recovery boiler. It's a low odor design. There are 5 identical units operating. It is the 5th unit of this design. They are all operating well below A-level requirements by the province on both SO2 and H2S. The recost area, again, is pressurized equipment, very high efficiency lime kiln. Lime kilns that were built in the 1950s, 1960s era required approximately 9 to 10 gigajoules per metric ton of product. The lime kiln we are proposing will require approximately 5 3/4 gigajoules of natural gas per ton of product. We have included in the system everything that we have been able to get our hands on to give us a very, very clean craft pulp mill. In the area of recycling, we do not make paper. The plant has never made paper. We do not have paper machines. We cannot recycle paper in a pulp mill. There is no equipment or process available allowing us to do this. Should we build a paper machine at some time in the future, and this has not been proposed by anyone within the corporation, but should we, I think any reasonable person would include a recycling facility. If you want to sell the product, it will have recycled fiber in it. Thank you. I'll skip on down to the licensing process, but prior to going there, in the environmental impact study, all numbers given are the worst case scenario. I know that the people who spoke to you ahead of us and several other groups, including the bankers, have retained consultants to study our numbers, and every one of them is reporting that those numbers are extremely conservative. The emission numbers are extremely conservative. We have done this because we don't want to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. This is the worst we will do. We fully anticipate doing much better. In the area of licensing, we were sweet-talked or militarily volunteered to participate in this major project review process. We knew very little about it when we were asked to participate. We were told, Mayor Moore, that people in the mining industry had been through it. I can't quote anyone who has, but we were assured that this was not a completely new process. It had been used before in other industry, and the provincial licensing people felt that it was the basis for a reasonable process for all major projects. So we agreed. Our understanding of it at the time was that presently in BC, you do not require licenses, environmental licenses and so on, to build the plant. You need them to operate the plant. So most industry in BC design, construct, and then go for licenses. All right? Our bankers felt that having agreement in principle up front, prior to construction, would give them some security when the time came to apply for the operating licenses. We further understand that receiving approval in principle does not shortcut any of the existing procedures for license applications. We are simply put through the same normal process. In return for participating in the thing, we get this agreement in principle which says that basically your project is sound. Any changes you will be required to make will be minor. That's our security from this major project review process. It has created an awful lot of extra work for us as well. I sympathize with Wayne and the rest of his committee because I've been working approximately the same schedule. I understand my owners tell me that's part of my job, so I'm getting paid for it, even though I don't understand where 8 hours is the same as 20. But I do sympathize with Wayne and his committee, and I do understand that it takes a lot of effort to read and review these articles. One of the changes already recommended in the major project review process, environmental impact assessment study, is that there be 2 editions, both truthful, but one easy to read by laymen. And I would guess that the next people who have to go through this process will have 2 sets. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would you bring up your resource people who will maybe help you answer questions, please?
They seem quite comfortable.
They're quite comfortable. In order to hear them, you're not going to answer any
No,
questions.
they will step up if needed.
Yeah, it just cuts into your time with the walking back and forth. We'll go in the reverse order, the same admonitions, Director. Director Cuthill, please.
Well, picking one question out of the many that are in my mind is difficult, Mr. Chairman, but I need some education, and I'm sure Fred would be able to help with this one. In the McCusp area, the TFL used to supply roundwood to the Celgar, Westar, I can never pick a name out of that whole conglomerate of names, for pulp purposes. But when the current owners took over the pulp mill, they closed the roundwood room, and there is no longer a market, I guess, for the roundwood that's of pulp quality on the TFL. And yet you say that there is that you survive on chips because you have no wood supply, and it strikes me as a contradiction. Could you please clarify that?
Yes, I certainly will clarify it for you. We have no rights to any of the wood. Okay, we purchase chips and or pulp logs from the market. Okay. All the area sawmills have been gradually improving their throughputs, 1%, 2%, 3% a year, to the point where there is an absolute glut of chips in the Castlegar area. We cut off our suppliers for 2 weeks in November, and we'll have to do the same very, very shortly. There are more chips than we are able to handle, but we have no right to any of that roundwood. Now, we also have absolutely nothing to say about how the tree farm license or anything is operated anymore. At the time we were a division of Westar, we had something to say about it. But we are a completely independent operation. Westar and we happen to be on cheek by jowl on the same site, and that's it. We have no access to this. We purchase chips from the market. We will purchase pulp logs should they be available and we can use them. We are planning, as part of our modernization, to put in a dry debarking wood room. But whether it's ever required or not, I really can't say. But we are prepared to utilize byproduct chips and pulp logs.
Thank you. Director McNeil?
No, I have no question.
Director Moore?
Mr. Brown, if you, where are you in your planning for your cogeneration project with
Okay.
Western Town?
I'll get engineering on you, if you don't mind, Audrey. The cogeneration project is part of the expansion project. By cogeneration, we take process steam and reduce the pressure by going through a turbine rather than pressure reduction valves. As a byproduct of this, we will raise approximately 55 kVA, which is about 48 megawatts. That is already in place in our proposal. The single standalone waste to energy type project that we are looking at right now has proceeded to the point where I have been able to arrange a meeting for late March between our designated officer, Mr. Fax, and Joe Drennan, who's with the West Kootenai Group. We feel that technically there is a very attractive project. Financially, it's also worthwhile. And now there needs to be upper level commitment to proceeding with it.
Thank you. Director Hamilton?
Yeah, I have a question. I appreciate you saying that you anticipate doing much better. I'd like you to explain to us here what your company's program is for cleaning up the contamination of aquatic biosystems in the Columbia River, and how much money is in your present budget for addressing the problem of what apparently appears to be a serious contamination problem in Roosevelt Lake and in the sediment right outside your mill in Castlegar. I think that before I hear about the clean future, I'd like to know how much you're spending on cleaning up the dirty past.
Okay. We had meetings with Mr. Crozier and Mr. Johnson from the Ministry of the Environment. They have not yet decided on a feasible procedure for dredging and then storing and or eliminating. Until that occurs, we have no idea of the cost of the project. But should the province require ourselves, Westar, and BC Hydro to do it, it will be done. And that's all I can say right now. I have no idea what the cost is.
You think it can be done?
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's the question that the ministry is attempting to answer. Whether it can be dredged, but once you get it out of the water, you have to do something with it. And that's where they're running into a problem.
But it's still going into the water
Please,
now.
Director Wiley.
Present mill, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, in the course of presentations made by the company to the advisory group in Celgar, it became clear that further directions were from government were still awaited by the company, and that the prospectus was not, in fact, in a final stage.
No, the company has never stated that. Has never stated that's in a final stage.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
This is the first step.
Director Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, the increase in trucking going to Nikoska and the Slocan Valley will be somewhat detrimental to the quality of life, plus possibly even the lowering of property values. Is there any reason, are you planning on looking into this and possibly using the Arrow Lake system for barging down the, and if not, are you planning on, is there any preparation for compensation for this lowering of the quality of life and property values?
Okay. The direct answer, of course, is that we have discussed the possibility of barging. There does not appear to be anything in place, so it will require a total structure somewhere for the trucks to come and stockpile the stuff, equivalent of grain elevators, I guess. The stuff's got to sit there. When the barges get there, they fill up and come down. So we've thought about it in a very superficial way, but we have not proceeded with anything. We would be very happy, of course, if the railway got back in the business. I think that would resolve most of our concerns, and I include myself in being very concerned about the traffic. As far as compensation, no, we haven't even discussed it.
Director Barclay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, would the pulp mill expansion still go on if there isn't a pulp agreement struck?
We feel that we, and by we I mean people who work in Castlegar. Okay, I don't know what someone sitting in Chicago thinks, but the people in Castlegar are convinced that we have the ability to fiber up without touching the forest. However, the people who are putting the money up want a guarantee that if this sawmill shuts down, we will have some alternative way of replacing the chips coming from it. And that's why the whole issue of pulpwood agreement.
Director Briley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like you to describe for me, if you could, you have no secure wood supply, you're doubling the capacity of the mill. The Americans in the Coralville National Forest are building a huge pulp mill, free trade's in place. Why would you do all this?
We do not have direct access to the forest. Doesn't mean we don't have secure chips. We have signed contracts, I believe, for 52% of the required chips at the present time, and are pursuing a further 13%, I believe, at the present time. So we would be at 65% within a few weeks. So we feel we have an assured chip supply, but we do not, we hope not to have the impact on the forest. We think that the present substructure and the present harvesters are adequate to supply our needs.
Thank you.
Director Cunningham, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. The cogeneration question asked by Director Moore somewhat interested me. Are there any plans for use of hog fuel and power generation from some of the other mills, such as ATCO and Washington Water Power
Okay.
type of agreement?
That is the standalone power generation project that we were referring to. We will have 2 boilers available to raise steam and subsequently raise power from the high-pressure steam after the new mill starts. The existing recovery boiler, modified to burn hog with a grate rather than a decanting bottom, would handle all the hog which Westar presently produce. Our present number 1 power boiler, where the Westar hog is being burnt partially, would be available to us to address other people's problems. So we would be able to handle more. It's a matter of economics, price power versus price of hauling stuff in.
So there is therefore a possibility then that some of the other mills that are now using, say, silent type burners or whatever may then shut those
There
things
is a
down?
possibility, but I want to underline that this has not been agreed to by anyone except a bunch of engineers, okay? A bunch of engineers have sat down.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, earlier we heard on the presentation they're speaking of SO2 times 37. And when you commented, you had said, as far as emissions, TRS at a small amount of CO2. There seems to be a discrepancy there.
Okay, I'll try to address the whole sulfur thing again. Our understanding is that the ultimate fate of any sulfur which leaves the plant, even today, is to report back to the earth as an acid-causing compound. Okay, it has a demand on the natural alkalinity of the water systems, the rock systems, and so on. If you look at the mass of sulfur, and our friends in the metallurgical industry only report sulfur. They don't report whether it's there as H2S or SO2 or whatever. They report it as sulfation. Okay. The amount of sulfur emitted by the new mill will be reduced by 350 tons per year over the present emission rates. Okay. Our feeling, and there are several articles which support this, is that even today, the TRS, which leaves the mill as an odorous compound, when it does report back to the earth, does so as a sulfurous acid.
Supplementary, can I ask whether that is a decrease in sulfur release to the air?
Yes, absolutely, of 350 tons per year.
Thank you. Director Neville, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown, both your presentation and the previous one illustrated that in order to complete your expansion, it's a very complex process, and my lay mind is straining somewhat to take in a lot of these issues. I wonder if you could just summarize for me the processes that you're now going through with government and where people have a chance for input, and just what stages you're going through, and not too detailed but summarized for my benefit.
All right, I'll try to do that to the best of my knowledge. Okay. We are presently in the stage 1 of the major project review process. That is a submission on the technology intended, the financing required, the structures required, and the impact on the environment, both from a chemical point of view and a socio-economical point of view. We have submitted the documents. These documents went public approximately 6 weeks ago, and we're open for comment originally for 4 weeks, then a month, then about a month and a half. Yesterday was the final date for submissions. I'm sure that no one's going to play hard and fast with that submission date. Following this steering committee made up of 5 ministries, headed by a co-chair from Environment and Regional Development. Will assess all the responses and codify, summarize the concerns of the people who responded. At that time, they will approach us and we will attempt to address all the concerns to their satisfaction. Should they be satisfied at that time, which is our hope, they can give us this agreement in principle. At this stage, we can begin building the place, but we cannot operate it. In order to operate it, we must apply for operating permits within the existing structure of the law, which does include public meetings. And that's my understanding of it.
Thank you.
So we're on the very, very early stages of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. Like Director Cuthill, there's many questions to be asked, but I can only ask one. I'm concerned about the sustainability of your demand for fiber. With this great new impetus of environmental concern, and the fact that most people in BC feel that the forests haven't been managed to the best interest of the public, and also that we may be overcutting our allowable, or at least the sustainable growth rate. There's a strong inference there that maybe allowable cuts will have to be reduced. Now,
Your question, Director Anderson?
do you have any facts and figures as to the long-term sustainability of fiber for your expansion?
Okay, the data we have at the present time indicates that right today there is a surplus of the material we need. It is being exported to the US, to Japan, and to coastal mills. There is a surplus of what we need already cut and being transported. That does not include the stuff that's being dealt with through slash burns. That's not on the market, so obviously is not available to us. Should that clean up, maybe Fred can give us an estimate of what he thinks the true net surplus without cutting another tree. Okay?
Well, our studies indicate that there's about 2.5 million meters of chips available in our fiber up area, which is much broader than the West Kootenay, and it goes into the East Kootenays, and it also goes into the Okanagan. And out of that situation right now, there's about 1.6 million meters that are leaving the area, and also there is the wood that Director Cuthill referred to, which we were previously using in the wood room, which is now leaving the area through Revelstoke. So there's a substantial volume of fiber available there. We see that as being ongoing and matched against the southern interior allowable cuts as they stand today. And I couldn't really address whether the allowable cuts are going down. That's not a decision of our company, nor do we have any real impact on that. That's a question you'd have to ask the Ministry of Forests in terms of the overall supply for the area. But we believe that given the current cut levels within the southern interior, that it is sustainable with a fall down coming in about 25 years.
Director Patterson, please.
Thanks.
Director Heathwood. Director Hess.
The pollution control standards that you use today, are they federal or provincial regulations?
They are the strictest. In some cases, in the case of SO2, they are the federal regulation. In the case of odor, TRS, suspended solids and so on, they are provincial A level. But we've gone with the stricter of the two because it is an international waterway.
Director Hertzman, please.
Are you planning on buying chips or pulp logs from the Creston Windle area in the foreseeable future, say 5 to 10 years for your expansion?
Fred?
Why I'm concerned is that in the Collusion report here, they've got the Creston Salmo area for chips. I'm just wondering, would you comment on that?
There's currently a situation in Creston with the existing plants where they cannot at times place all of their fiber. For example, right now, they would, on certain occasions, they'd like to place more fiber with us, but we can't take it because of this glut that Mr. Brown referred to. And it would be our intention to try and take whatever was available in the Creston area from both Wendell and Hushbound.
Director Voisin.
Yes, getting back to the problem of road traffic, I'd like to ask you, do you purchase your chips on site or delivered to your plant?
There's a mixture of agreements.
We do it both ways,
Yeah.
Director Boykin. We buy some places we pay the freight, other places the supplier pays the freight, but in the end, of course, the cost of the fiber falls back on our shoulders. But as an example of the mix of arrangements, Pope and Talbot arrange their own freight here, and we pay them a price which includes a freight allowance. In the case of Hidden Creek Timber, we pay them a delivered price to the mill. So there's a mix of arrangements.
Thank you. Director Barclay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, you've already been asked this question once, but I didn't appreciate the answer, I suppose. Again, I will ask, has there been a study done, to your knowledge, on transporting of chips to Celgar Mill either by rail or by barge on the Arrow Lakes?
There hasn't been a formal study done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Director Cuddill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question, that is, if you folks were to accede to the request for an environmental assessment review process being implemented, what effect would that have on your development of your proposal?
Could you define which review process you're referring to?
Well, the previous group expressed an interest in I believe it was a 6-month review process.
Okay.
With intervenor funding and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering how that would impact on your...
Okay, the impact as I see it today is that a 6-month delay prior to construction proceeding would cost us this summer's construction season, which is a 1-year delay in the project. It precludes all possibility of meeting any of the requirements for 1991. And I really don't know what it does to the people who are putting up the money.
I'm sorry.
I really don't know what it does to the banks who are supplying the funds.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
Just very briefly, I was just wondering, do you feel that this expansion, this extra demand for chips, although there is a surplus now, do you think that this in the long run might be an incentive for mills to increase their milling capacity so that they can now sell their chips to a local market?
Fred?
Well, my personal belief is it will increase the viability of the sawmilling industry in the area and give them a better background in terms of being
Just that what I meant was, is this going to possibly put a further demand on our trees because people see there another market now to sell more chips?
I don't see that happening right now. What we do is we try and place the chips that we were talking about. We try to place them somewhere in either the Pacific Northwest, export them to Japan or somewhere else. So I see that as being I see that as not being an additional demand in that respect. But in terms of as fiber becomes more competitive and we can access more pulpwoods, that is described by Mr. Cuthill and by this gentleman in terms of using that as part of the process, I think that's going to start to happen. In fact, in case anybody's not clear, we intend to run the woodroom on the basis of 1 shift per day for the 5 days a week. So we expect that we will start trying to window in, is how I refer to it, on that volume of wood that's currently, I perceive to be going up in smoke in debris piles.
Thank you. Director Bradley.
Just a quickie, Mr. Chairman. Because of the dioxide identification in Roosevelt Lake, the comment was made in Spokane that the pulp mills in the United States are so much more efficient than the pulp mills in Canada. Could you comment? comment on your proposed mill at its completion, how efficient, effective it would be compared to American standards?
All right. There, before we extract anything, I think we should read the press release as it was said. Okay, Arnquist said that the Celgar Pulp Mill is the likely source of the dioxin interference to the upper Columbia River. Absolutely no arguments. We aren't the only pulp mill on that system, but we certainly are part of it. Ecology collected 4 fish, Response Canadian Government report early last year, that was our report, of high dioxin and furan concentration in 2 whitefish samples. According to Canadian officials, the Celgar Pulp Mill is proposing to double its pulping capacity.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear.
Okay, the proposal calls for installing new bleaching technology which will reduce dioxin discharges to extremely low levels. The estimate is 10 to 20 parts per quadrillion, the level which can be detected by current analytical equipment. In other words, we don't know how low it's going to be. We know it can't be measured.
So
That's where we're going.
you will be as good as the American.
We will be as good as possibly the 1 or 2 best American mills.
Thank you.
No, I made the point I wanted to make about this, the non-detectable dioxin.
Director Wiley?
One of the questions that was repeatedly raised in the course of the advisory group review was the applicability of 1977 standards in 1990. And are you aware of the pending federal,
Yes.
and provincial
Yes.
standards?
Yes, I read the Greenpeace comment on the federal results yesterday. The federal results are identical to the proposed BC result. The federal regulations are identical to the proposed BC regulations for 1991 and 1994.
And
Thank you.
secondarily, are you guaranteeing then that you will comply?
Okay, Director Anderson?
We will comply or we will not get a license.
Last question.
Yeah, I'd like to
Director
know-
Hamilton?
Yeah, I'd like to know if you've started any construction or undertaken any site preparation.
We have undertaken some site preparation to the extent of preparing a parking lot so we can move our employees' location of vehicles. And we have started preparation of a landfill site.
Have you actually started up?
We have started scratching around. We've put in a parking lot which will allow us to move our employees from the site. And we have received permission for this landfill site, but the ownership of the landfill site has not been transferred. The government will not even go that far. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We appreciate you and your delegation appearing.
Thank you.
Again, our thanks to the original group. As I mentioned earlier, at the latter part of the agenda, we'll be discussing what the board wishes to do, if any. And once again, we thank the people. Don't be strangers. Come back again. It doesn't have to be a flaming issue. It's nice to see something right. We'll call the meeting adjourned for lunch. Back at 1 o'clock, directors.